Demon Slayer fans, we are officially back in the Infinity Castle after that jaw-dropping finale that we got in the last Demon Slayer season. Infinity Castle is finally here, and it's purely awesome. As the trailers had promised, as the premise had promised, as the manga had promised, which I've not read, but talking to many people, a lot of people talk about how great the Infinity Castle arc is, and let me tell you right now, I'm satisfied, and I'm excited for part 2 and part 3. What's going on, buddy? Welcome back to a brand new movie review. Today we're discussing Demon Slayer Infinity Castle. I know I don't get to talk a lot of anime over on this channel, but definitely when we get a chance to, especially when it mixes into the movie frontier, I know I'm going to take that opportunity immensely to jump on that. And Demon Slayer Infinity Castle is one of those things. So as a little bit of background context for my Demon Slayer, a little bit of that, because I have not talked a lot about it on this channel since Mugen Train. I like the series overall. I really liked the first season, but I found that there was a significant pacing issue in there that kind of dragged the season out. But then we get into Mugen Train, which I thought was a 5 out of 5 experience. I absolutely loved Mugen Train. I saw it 3 times in theaters. Took my wife one of those times who she'd never really seen anything anime before. She watched Mugen Train and absolutely loved it. Never even seen the show either. And then I got a little soured on Demon Slayer, specifically once they turned Mugen Train into the show and it was the start of the next season, and that kind of just rubbed me the wrong way because I felt like that really was a theatrical experience, and I really wish they would have just kept it specifically as a movie. And then the Entertainment District arc happened, and I never watched it until up to 3 days ago as you were watching this. When I got the invite for this, I was going to go in blind and just be like, let's just see how it goes. But I decided that probably wasn't the best case. So I actually binged everything Demon Slayer that I'd missed, Entertainment District arc, all the way up until this film within less than like 36 hours. I spent all that time watching it. And for me, the Entertainment District arc, which a lot of people hyped up about, I thought was really good until the last 3 episodes where I thought that got to be like, okay, I get the hype on it now. But the last 2 arcs specifically, I thought were significantly dragged out. And a lot of that comes down to where the first front half of those seasons are decent, but the back half, especially like the last 3 episodes, is where that significant stuff comes. That reminded me, this is why I love Demon Slayer. This is why I should love Demon Slayer. But I really was a little worried for Infinity Castle at least, because I didn't know how they were going to play this out, especially because it's 3 parts. Are they going to drag it out a little bit to set up everything? Are they not? And no, this very much gets right into the gist of it. In some way, shape, and form, if you want to compare it to other movies, if you're not familiar with anime, I would compare this to Infinity War. It very much feels like the start of the storm in every sort of way. And by the time this film ends, in a way, you have some optimism to yourself, but at the same time, you have this dread and despair, which is something that Infinity War leaves you with, as the same time as Empire Strikes Back also leaves you with. So I think it does have that great 1-2 punch of delivering a fantastic first part that also delivers emotional experience, but at the same time preparing you for what is to come in part 2 and what I can imagine will be part 3. Now, I do think it is absolutely ridiculous that this film's coming out now, and then the tentative release dates are like 2026 and or 2027 and 2029. I think that's insane. Whatever, though. As someone who is not familiar with the manga and does not know how the series ends, I can just base it off of my knowledge of enjoying this for what it was. And Infinity Castle is awesome, except for the pacing, which is the same issue that I've very much had with the entire series overall. So I'm very excited to talk about Demon Slayer. If you can't tell, I do love anime when I get time to binge it, which has been the one thing that, like, anytime I've had, like, in between, like, watching my son or feeding my son, that's kind of been the one thing I've, like, been able to pop on and kind of start to catch up on certain things. And Demon Slayer was one of those that I had the opportunity to do so. Very excited to. So with that said, let's dive into my pros. So first off, I'll get this right off the bat. The animation has never been better. I mean, genuinely, I think the animation is top tier. You can see why it took them so long to develop and make this. It is because the animation has never been better in the series, and I would go as far to say it's one of the best animated anime films of all time. It just flat off the bat, like it just gets better and better every single fight scene, every single time they learn a new technique or form. And for me, that is one of the strongest suits of Demon Slayer, especially as the Demon Slayer corps are now all drawn into the Infinity Castle. And being in this Infinity Castle, it's like something straight out of a Christopher Nolan film, specifically like the ending of Interstellar. All these moving parts in this, basically, this building that is completely alive. And when you see in like Tanjiro or the Hashira, like run around and jump from building to building as they face all these different demons, specifically the upper rank ones, that's where it feels so desperate. And I love that this final fight is kind of the start to get to Muzan, who I might be mispronouncing some of these names. I highly apologize. Just understand that, like, I could hear the name 30 times and I would still probably say the name wrong. But that's my thing, is that, like, the location that they are in is mostly my favorite location that we've seen in an anime for Demon Slayer, and primarily probably in an anime in quite a bit, specifically where a whole entire sequence or event is taking place. And I absolutely love that. And I think that is actually one of the coolest things about Demon Slayer's Infinity Castle, is the location of the Infinity Castle and the way that it's all played out. On top of that, the colors, the vibrancy, everything to that, all these different abilities, the clashing of swords and fists, and all of those sorts of things just jive for such an incredible experience. This is an incredible experience in theaters. People who are getting to see this in IMAX, I'm sure you're going to be experiencing one of the coolest things seeing in theaters. And that's like one of my things, is that Demon Slayer Infinity Castle delivers on that awesomeness. It never fronts. It never dissatisfies in any of the action scenes. Even to the very first one that you watch. Like, you're watching this first massive action scene. I'm not going to spoil which character it's with, but I'm watching it and I'm like, holy shit, this is awesome. And my friend next to me hears me say that and she goes, no, this is only the first one. There's like 3,000 better ones. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm like, it gets better than this. And she kept telling me it gets better, it gets better, it gets better. To even when this part one ended, and I'm like, that was incredible. She goes, oh, that's nothing yet, which is insane to me. But the one thing that I'll really dive into here, specifically into the story and what I really dug this time around, is that while all the action scenes are fantastic and seeing all the different forms and the way that they play out, especially Zenitsu, mispronounce his name, I can never say it right. I hate it. But the little blonde kid, I love his development this season. He's always been my favorite in Demon Slayer personally, even though I really like Tanjiro. Inosuke, he's awesome too. Always been my favorite. I don't know why. I just really love his essence and everything to him, and seeing his development as a character. And specifically here, the fight that he has in here is so personable, but it's also intense and fast. And the animation with the lightning strikes is incredible, to the point that when it ended, I was like, oh my God, that's it. I wanted more. I thrived for it. I dug it. The biggest piece that everyone's going to be talking about is Jinyu and Tanjiro's fight with Upper 3. That's what was promised in the trailer, and that's what's promised in here, and it absolutely delivers. Upper 3, like, as I just mentioned, like, I think Upper 3 is like a top 3 character in all of Demon Slayer, and even more here. Of course, as the biggest thing that I think is the biggest takeaway from Demon Slayer, and actually one of the best parts about the Demon Slayer franchise, is the fact that it always does give development to each and every one of the demons that they take out. And finally getting to learn a little bit more about Upper 3 adds into that storytelling device that I feel packs in a very emotional punch. And I would go as far as say Upper 3's backstory is actually one of my favorite things that we've ever learned about. You start to even learn a little bit more about Tanjiro himself and some of the things that kind of go head in head. But also, as an entire series as a whole, this is a thing that comes full round circle. There's certain things that Tanjiro references or some of the other characters reference that haven't happened since season 1, and kind of seems as like a little insulary thing, but now is actually pretty serious. Specifically for Tanjiro, one of his flashbacks that he ends up having in here is like one of the most important pieces for his character arc. These are elements in Demon Slayer that I absolutely love, and I love that ultimate payoff by the end, especially as it is one of the significant pieces that helps them finish a fight or get to the end and survive for some new thing that they discovered. That's where this series thrives. And I will say that, as I mentioned, all the fight scenes in here are so personable, and you very much are thriving for them to see how that emotional state comes out. Because you can have awesome action scenes and just be enthralled with watching them, but it is that emotional stakes that adds a whole other tension. And again, adding emotion from both sides, not just from the hero's point of view. And that's what makes this series actually thrive and work, specifically in Mugen Train, this and the Entertainment District arc, which I think are, again, the three strongest ones because of those reasons. Top of that, seeing some of the new things that Tanjiro can do in here, absolutely amazing. And it, again, just makes you want to jump up and scream and feel hyped. And I feel like if you get a really good crowd for this movie, you are going to be in such a fun time at the films. Like, this for me was an experience and one that I thoroughly enjoyed. I genuinely think I would go as far as say, oh, that was a masterpiece of an anime film if it wasn't for one glaring issue. The film is 2.5 hours, and it absolutely did not need to be. There are significant pacing issues in this movie, and I think that is one of the biggest detriments to the entire film. As I've said, it is the biggest issue for the entire Demon Slayer series as a whole. The whole series has pacing issues right across the board, and this movie has them probably to the worst degree. I think there was a perfect 2-hour film in here. By the last 30 minutes, I started to feel the little bit of the pacing and kind of just started going, okay, let's wrap this shit up, to the point that when the credits rolled and it's basically a whole other scene, I rolled my eyes. Again, I like my experience with Demon Slayer, and I very much thoroughly enjoyed this movie, but 2.5 hours is a lot to commit to, and I think for me, that's where you're starting to overextend yourself just a tad bit. And it makes me wonder if they do actually have so much to pump into 2 more movies. Genuinely. I can see maybe in some degree, in some way, but if they're all 2.5 hours, I wonder why. It goes back to my last thing that I really want to give a professional pro to this entire film, is the fact that while it is 2.5 hours, and if that's their direction, that's what the director wanted to do, I claim them for that, even if it didn't fully work for me. I really do like that it wasn't just all action. They could have easily fallen into that same suit that let's just deliver on the war and the battle that we've been promising for season to season, especially like the last 2 seasons where not a lot of stuff happened personally. And they could have easily done that, and they didn't. They actually deliver emotional storytelling, even to characters that aren't a part of the main trio, or about characters that have significantly affected them lately. That is one thing that I was very much approached and happy with, and I cannot wait to see the next part. I really can't. I really hope this release dates get moved up. So, with all that said, let's get into my final thoughts. Before we get into my final thoughts, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button, comment down below your guys' thoughts. I really want to hear your guys' thoughts on Infinity Castle. Who's your favorite Demon Slayer character? Let's talk about that down below. So Demon Slayer Infinity Castle was an incredible experience that flashes some of the best action set pieces you will ever lay your eyes on, but also not forgetting to pack a punch with its emotional storytelling that opens your eyes to new areas. Bring on part 2. Just please, please, please make the pacing better, because the pacing is the one thing that significantly holds this film back, and from me being able to give it a 5 out of 5. So all that said, I'm going to give Demon Slayer Infinity Castle, and I'm going to say part 1 a 4 out of 5. Thank you so much again, guys, for watching this. Make sure to hit that like and subscribe button again. Comment down below your guys' thoughts. And of course, until next time, stay classy.